Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Liberty Report with Professor Red Pill and Adam Maxwell from the Liberty Rising Group. So, today we're going to be talking about oil, right? So, oil is no longer just a commodity, it's a weapon. It's a weapon that shapes wars, alliances, and the global order. Even in 2026, when technology and renewable energies are on the rise, oil still decides the winners and the losers in geopolitics. So today, we're going to break down how Iran, China, and Russia are at the center of the energy chess game and how that's going to impact you. Thank you for being with us. Adam Mad Maxwell from Liberty Rising Group. Take it over.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on the 11th of March, 2026. We're week 2 of the big war. Or the big war in the Middle East. Of course, there's a huge war going on in Europe. There's maybe another dozen wars going on around the world, but this is certainly a major war in the Middle East. Indeed, we're living through a historic period. It's historic and transitory. The global system itself is shifting technologically, economically, and geopolitically. We're seeing this with artificial intelligence, energy infrastructure, and great power politics or competition. This is the big one that a lot of people skipped over. I think we had like a decadence where we weren't so concerned about war, complacent, comfort. But what we've seen is this reassertion of hard power, as well as a redefinition of what power actually means in the 21st century, in the present time. This was actually what I predicted 6 years ago. Not the wars, I also was naive, but a decade of transformation, especially a digital transformation. So right in the middle of this transition, some people say we're already in World War III. Maybe. Certainly, if you look at how China and Japan view the Second World War, for them it didn't begin in 1939. It began much earlier, a few years earlier. The point is that, and so some historians say World War II actually began then. If World War III breaks out, the big war, which is China against the USA directly, or even Russia against the USA as a direct rather than a coalition war. That's the big war that I think we're gearing up for. The point, so if that comes to pass in recent times, then we would have said that World War III begun in 2022 with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But so a major war in the Middle East. But what is strange about this war in the Middle East? It's part of this period piece, but no one in the West seems to be able to clearly articulate why America started this war. Their narratives don't really hold together. Iran knows enough. Right? They've been in the crosshairs for 30, 40 years. Finally, this is the war they've been stealing against for decades. Probably. This war could end tomorrow, I doubt it. And there's another, who knows? But this appears to be America's trying its best to destroy the Islamic regime, Islamic Republic. And it seems, to me at least, that Iran is holding out. It's surviving. And if the Islamic regime survives, of Iran survives, I think that's a victory for Iran to some extent. We hear it's about nuclear weapons, about security, terrorism, ideology, religion. Sometimes we hear it framed quite reductively as a war for Israel, or perhaps a broader geopolitical struggle. All of those explanations ring true. pieces, fragments, but none of them actually explain the strategic calculus of why we're in this war and what is this new age of power. That's really what we're doing. So my specialism, what I like doing, is looking at the world through a quantitative lens, a strategic equation, calculus, and that's what we'll be going into. Because I listen to a lot of analysis, a lot of very intelligent people, but I haven't heard anyone saying what I've been thinking, what I've prepared, and it gets a little frustrating. Not frustrating. Some great analysis out there, some very schizo analysis too. I'm excited to go through this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're in a war. I said this war was coming. I said it was coming. And I mean, the situation is oil remains central because 20% of the global supplies move through choke points like the Straits of Hormuz. That's a very small corridor in the Gulf or in the Persian Gulf, depends on which country you're speaking from. So this recent conflict, it's been kind of disruptive in the shipments, and Trump himself had said we're going to secure the shipments and guide these oil tankers with naval support. I mean, let's go into that, right? We have naval support, right? And it's debatable if the Navy is even that productive or able to actually secure this small onslaught of territory. But anyway, I digress. Any interruption, real or threatened, instantly spikes prices, as we've seen. We predicted this would happen in the first podcast that we made, like a few days. I think it was the Wednesday before the Saturday strikes that we predicted, and we said there's going to be a strike. They're going to start striking Iran. It's going to most likely happen Saturday. We are 1 for 3 on our predictions, which isn't bad. It's a 30 percentile. We thought there would be a peace deal in Ukraine in the summer. It was attempted. It wasn't successful, but it was attempted by Trump. Putin had come to the United States, to Alaska, to meet with Trump to negotiate those peace deals. They fell through. We thought it would happen. It didn't. I mean, technically, we're 2 for 3. But we had one prediction that Taiwan might possibly have been, or at least I made that. You didn't. I made that prediction early on when we started podcasting, that there would possibly be a window for the Chinese to invade Taiwan, because tension was that. And I had said, if China did not make a move on Taiwan, this was 3 years ago, they would never make a move on Taiwan. And it would never happen again. And you would see the Chinese economy start to retract a little bit. And we've been seeing that. And now with this current oil as strategic role in global politics or world politics, Trump's strategy, global strategy, trade policies, and tariffs that we all predicted would happen, and they did happen, it's caused interruptions and Chinese economy. And of course, Trump came out and he was like, we're going to work with China because China needs the oil. Well, no shit. They need the oil. I think 30% of their dependency is coming from Saudi Arabia, or that's straight right there. That's 20% of global supplies. A good portion of that, of their consumable oil, is coming from the region.
Most of the oil supply coming out of the Strait goes to the east, to China, Japan, correct, Asia, correct, and it's mostly it goes through. There's two critical straits: the Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Malacca by Singapore. The Strait of Hormuz is more narrow, I think, and certainly easier to control. So this is quite a major test of the big the big war, if that ever comes, between America or the West, uh, like the global American empire versus China, Russia, the opposition.
Yeah. So basically, countries whose economies depend heavily on oil, of this oil, or imported oil, if you will, as I've described, China being specifically, and as you mentioned, Japan and the rest of the Asian Pacific, they're especially vulnerable. And Trump has addressed this. So oil isn't just a fuel, it's a security issue. It's a diplomatic lever that Trump is pulling at this point. And it causes war, which we're in. So it's not that Trump has already, Trump and Israel led war or strike has led to war, but a continual embargo of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the World War III game changer that we've been predicting. I was thinking it'd be 2030 by the time we would see any type of major conflict or escalation. I think China's trying to play, is still going to play ball with the United States. And I do believe that the United States, under concessions, is going to be like, hey, you know what? We'll cover the oil lost revenue. You just stay tight, stay neutral. We'll get you oil. I think that's what they're working on right now. They also, like I had predicted, I had said this a year ago on the podcast and the Telegram group, links in the description. I had said that Putin's going to throw Iran under the bus. And where's Putin? Where is Iran? What's going on? He's MIA. He says let's do the peace train, man. Let's peace. He's like peace, and then he's like peace. So he didn't get their back, and there's a reason for that. There's a war going on in Ukraine. I'll get into the question that popped up with this in regards to this, but and we'll get into the Ukraine conflict as a result of this current development. But I do believe that Trump has informed Putin. He has said that he has talked to him. Didn't explain exactly what he talked about, but I can tell you how that conversation went. We're going to work on a peace deal in Ukraine and tell Zelensky that if he does not agree to concessions, that we will defund him completely and push the NATO and Europe to defund him. We want to bring Russian oil back to Europe and lift embargoes, because our goal is not to continue this war in Ukraine, but to defeat and regime change in Iran, as I said would end up happening. I said 2026 would be the pinnacle year. We're going to see a lot of action because of collapse 2025. We are in the collapse. We are in a global-wide economic depression that I predicted for 2025, end of the year. I said this was coming. We're in an AI bubble. The AI bubble is bursting in real time. And this war, this new situation, is a result of all of these different things going on. We'll see what happens, but I do believe oil is the key factor here, especially Venezuela. Venezuela is was one of the larger contributors to China, as well as Saudi Arabia and Iran a little bit. I think they bought more oil from Saudi Arabia than they did from Iran. But the reality is that oil is the lifeblood of the economy, the global economy, and China is a very industrialized country, and they're heavily dependent on this. They buy a certain amount from Russia, yes, of course, but Russia can only provide certain needs for China. So unless Trump wants to go to war with, unless he wants to go to war with China directly, in direct confrontation, he's going to have to come to some type of contingency. He's going to have to work with them, and that's where we're at right now. I think he's working that deal, and we'll see what happens. But let's get into the question here from DC 177. He asked, "What is the future of Ukraine now?" And like I said, the future of Ukraine is that war is done. And as I did a title for one of my shorts called "A War Ends and a New War Begins." So the Ukraine war ends, and the new war is Iran, Middle East. This is the new war. This is the new thing. I talked to a minister, a friend of mine in the region. Can't tell you which country or what he does. We come to the same conclusion that this is going to be a prolonged war. This war is going to, because we're in an election year in the United States. I think that this war is going to last through the elections. It'll last through the summer, through the fall, and it may go into next year. Very possible. We don't know at this point. And like I said, you had mentioned before in Telegram, as well as in the green room before we went live. You're saying that, like, basically the administration, the United States administration, is just not being consistent and doesn't know what they're doing, like a chicken with its head cut off, so to speak. So, what do you think on this situation?
You said a lot. I think just what is the future of Ukraine now? I think the war in Ukraine continues so long as the Kiev regime can find the warm bodies to throw into the trenches. That's what we've said all along. We said should be over by fall of last year. They're keeping it going. All right, maybe fall of this year. As soon as they run out of bodies, it's a doomed conflict. Russia's winning. Russia, and here's the thing about communication. Russia set out at the very start of the military operation. We have 3 goals, 3 objectives: denazification, demilitarization, and the liberation of the Donbass. Demilitarization, hundreds of that, like the Ukrainian military is being destroyed and reconstituted, All their stockpiles are gone. All their best soldiers probably gone. Of course, they've still got an army, but it's no longer the greatest European army as it was in 2022. Denazification, that's regime change, that's culling this resurgent anti-Russian, anti-Muscovite ideology. Not going to get into that. And liberation of the Donbass, they've basically done that. They've also taken the 2 additional oblasts, plus Crimea, which they took 10 years ago now, 12 years ago. So here's our objectives. We're making progress along them all. We're killing more Ukrainians than they're killing of us. Very costly, hundreds of thousands of dead, both sides. But they're winning that war. The Americans... I'll get into the calculus in just a moment about what they're actually doing. But first, I just want to go back to China. I believe, and I have believed, that China is the rising power. China, the Chinese have a word for China, an endonym. It's not China, it's Zhonghu. Apologies for my pronunciation. It means Middle Kingdom, or the center of the world. And everyone else, in your periphery, you're not the center of the world. Though Americans obviously believe that they are. China has 4 times the population of America. The alleviation of poverty, this transformation of China through industry, which requires oil, has been huge. So my belief, and looking at the calculus, my belief is China appreciates the time. Professor, you said oil is the key factor, and then you said it fuels the economy. It fuels industry. It fuels industrial output. Economics is a lot of things. Oil fuels energy, industry, industrial output. China is the rising power. War. What is the calculus for war? You've got the power balance, resources, military capacity, technology, ideology, and time. And my understanding is USA. Look, it's a great power. It's the superpower. It's been the hegemon, but it's kind of plateauing the power curve. Maybe, probably, or if it's not plateauing, the rate of, my belief is the rate of increase of Russia, China is outpacing that of America. Maybe not Russia, maybe, who knows, it depends how you think. And that makes sense, right? If USA's up here and they've hollowed out their industrial base and they're becoming decadent and they're being wasteful and inefficient, and foolish and incompetent. Even though I don't think America is going to collapse, it's already collapsed, right? Even though I don't think America is going to zero, it's not what it was. It's not what it ought to be. I don't yet see the correction. Whereas China, it's got lots of problems, and professors are a lot more pessimistic on China than I, and more knowledgeable. I'm not so familiar with China. I when I was at university, I was with some Chinese people before university. Some of my best friends were from Hong Kong, China, and I learned a lot that year about China, the Chinese, Xi Jinping. This is 7, 8, whatever years ago now. Haven't looked too much into it, but my perspective here is they're the rising power, and rising powers benefit from time. Dominant powers fear time, and this is one of those calculus that America's looked at with Iran. So my belief is that the Chinese prefer delay, trade, diplomacy in order to accumulate their capacity, while the United States historically prefers preventative containment before the balance shifts too far. Professor said that 3 years ago you said that you thought this was a window of opportunity. Certainly, this closing window of opportunity is one of those key strategic considerations. You have to look at the power gap, the rate of change, strategic opportunity. The rising power tends to have a longer window of opportunity. It is the hegemon. It is the dominant power that's really looking at that opportunity, and that's what we've seen with Iran. So we can see that the Iran war is not explained by a single variable. It's a strategic set. Right? You've got Israeli regional security calculus. You've got American global hegemonic strategy, energy choke point and resources, and we'll get into these a bit more in a bit. But you've got military capability trajectories. So the drones, the Navy, technological competition, you've got AI and infrastructure, and that goes back to the energy. And you've got these broader timelines of great power competition, particularly with China. One can look at all the actions that are going on in Ukraine, in the Middle East, Venezuela, Cuba, and you can say if America is saying 2050, probably a war with China, I don't know, hope not. But if that's what they're thinking, then you can see that things are kind of lining up. When Trump took over Venezuela, we said on this podcast, go back, we said he's doing this to secure the oil prior to initiating another war. I think we said in the Middle East with Iran. I can't recall that, but we said before
100%. That's what we said. Yeah, we said that he was going into Venezuela to secure oil in order to secure the Americas, that we had enough oil for our Navy and domestic output or input. And this was going to be a strategy to eventually go into Iran.
Because if the Strait of Hormuz was closed off, look, America has a lot of energy. It doesn't have all the energy. It's mostly energy independent. It can't supply all its allies and a big war machine and the Strait of Hormuz. If it remains blockaded, it causes, economy, everything's interconnected, globalized. It causes oil prices all over to rise because it's more scarce. And so so America, they control Venezuelan oil. They haven't necessarily stolen it all, but they have said, we're now deciding who you can sell to. So what I look at here is I look at things through calculus, through strategic equations, looking at what are the variables that all relate to produce an outcome. Because war is not caused by one thing; it's an extension of politics by other means. It is the result of a strategic equation: energy, power balance, technology, ideology, and time.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, in regards to China and what we, the strategy geopolitically, China's an energy imperative. So China is the world's largest crude importer currently in the world. I mean, they're one of the largest economies, if not the largest, depending on what metric you use. So, I mean, they're heavily dependent on Middle Eastern oil and Venezuelan oil. So historically, they bought large volumes from Iran, from Venezuela, often at discount due to Western sanctions. They've took advantage of these Western sanctions. And of course, Trump and big oil has taken note. And that's the reason why I believe, as an academic and an analyst, that's why Trump went into Venezuela. That's why he is currently striking Iran, because of the strategy to prevent China from growing economically. As Adam had pointed out, that their economy has grown, that their economy is very powerful, and it is a threat to American hegemony. So when shipping's disrupted, and understand that China has some of the largest ports, and not only China has the largest ports, we had Swend on here from Peru, and he talked about recent infrastructure building of ports there and all over South America and all over Southeast Asia, and the fact that China has been putting naval bases all along the Asian shipping routes. I pointed this out 2 years ago before the current before the war in Israel, before the first strike. I had said that China was taking steps to become disruptive to the American shipping and monopoly on oil and energy, and especially in the Middle East and the Asian corridors. Um, but for an example, after the sanctions against Russia, China became a larger buying partner of Russian oil, tapping strategic reserves, basically. So the insight here is that Beijing's foreign policy in the Middle East isn't just about diplomacy. It isn't, their global strategy. As Joe Slinte says, China's business is business, America's business is war. There's a lot of truth to his statement there, but they're about securing energy supply at scale, economies of scale, if you will. That's China's agenda. America's agenda is control, continue to monopolize the energy sectors, and make sure countries are trading in the petrodollar. Because when countries decide not to trade in the petrodollar, that affects the U.S. economy. It affects oil. It affects energy. These are very important things to consider. Yeah, let me get into this one question, and I'll have you take over, Adam. So, and this is relevant. What does Adam think about Taiwan and China? I know what Professor thinks, and would love to know what Adam's opinion. I think he's already kind of discussed a little bit about that, but let me go ahead and put him back on and answer that question for us.
Thank you. So again, I'm not so familiar. I'm not an expert on China and Taiwan. I've got I've had friends from China, from Taiwan. Um, it's quite polarizing on some people. What I would like, I'm gonna piss off Taiwanese. I would like a peaceful outcome, which appears to be diplomatic and unification or reunification with the motherland. Now, when I was younger, and this war, and the coronavirus came out of China, funded in part by the USA. I was like, screw China, and I found out about the first island chain, and I'm looking into US geopolitical strategy, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've got the first island chain, we've got Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, yeah, we're going to beat China. And the more I look into it, and the more I mature, of course, and the more I learn, I think a kinetic war against Taiwan by China is not ideal for anyone. I think it would hurt Taiwan more. I understand. I had friends from Hong Kong of during 2019, which is when they reabsorbed it into China. Lot of hate, a lot of protest, very polarizing. I understood the resistance to China, and of course, appreciating freedom. I wouldn't want to be part of China. Is Taiwan more free? Maybe. Do I like? What is the manifest destiny of China? It's probably to absorb Taiwan? And if that's the case, is it better to wage war or hopefully a diplomatic, peaceful means? So I would prefer the peaceful reunification with perhaps autonomy or whatnot. The way I see it, it's a logistics thing. Taiwan is an island off the Chinese mainland. America's very far away. Japan's over there, still very far away. Philippines, all these places. You can, right? The strategy here is, okay, China is dependent on oil, so we can block the Strait of Hormuz that we can control, right? And we can block the Strait of Malacca probably, and that's why we need a good navy, right? And we've got submarines. And if we were to choke off the Chinese, as you say, the largest crude importer, surely within 5 years we win the war because they run out of energy. This is, of course, why Japan went to war with America in World War II, because America said, no more energy for you, we're going to do an oil embargo. Japan says, we need the oil, so we're gonna
that's bingo. And that's what I had said with the parallels. Sorry to interject, but that's the parallels that I've been talking about the last couple of years in the podcast, is that we're seeing very much parallels with World War II and a 100-year cycle of today. That's why, are we in World War III is the question we should be asking. Is this the beginning of World War III? Because World War II started almost identically to, or similar in a lot of ways to what's going on now. There was a rogue state that was having economic turmoil, woke ideology, democracies, failed democracies, hyperinflation, and they had an Austrian painter take over. And that Austrian painter started doing what? He started invading his neighbors for oil, for energy, for gold, for conquest. Listen to what Trump's address is. And I'm not calling Trump a dictator or anything of that nature. I mean, he's still within the confines of the Constitution. But those three things were mentioned in his last address: gold, conquest, and oil.
Ein Volk.
Things often rhyme.
Yeah. Ein Reich. one people, one kingdom, one leader. Right. So the Austrian painter also, hey, I'm going to reunite Germany. I'm going to solve the Czech Sudetenland security thing, security problem. And look, we've got the Bolshevik Bolshevik Russia, a rising power. Germany, we were the most developed place in the world, 1913. We have a lot of industry. In fact, we can pretty much take over the Soviet Union so long as we don't get in a war with the Western powers. But the Bolsheviks, a rising power, expansionist ideology, a war of ideologies at its core. And of course, we have a war of ideologies today. Now, the one thing is, talking about...
One thing, though, who funded the Austrian painter's rise to power?
Quite a few people.
This is a question for the chat, and I might put it as a quiz at the end of the podcast. Who funded Austrian painter's rise to power?
So this is what I don't appreciate about the American grand geopolitical strategy. I find it to be, there's rationale for it, but if you're against China, you don't make an enemy of Russia. And they made an enemy of Russia. Russia, 25 years ago, Russia came to America and said, they said in the 90s, we want to be your friend. We lost the Cold War or whatever. We collapsed, you didn't. Let's build for the future. America laughed. Literally, I think it was Clinton laughed at Putin when he said, we can be friends, we can have a security partnership, we can even join NATO. He laughed at him and said, absolutely not. Why? Because you're the enemy, you're Russia. Because they're a great pole of power, a civilizational state, right? Like, why can't Russia join the EU? Because at 140 million people, they'd be over a quarter of the EU population. They're the largest European economy. They've got all the resources. They've got the industry. They would basically take it over. Instead of Germany controlling Europe, Fourth Reich, you would have Moscow being the dominant power in Europe, the European Union. So you can't have that. You zoom in just on Europe, you can kind of make it make sense. The Soviet Union of Brussels, of socialist states, versus Moscow, which is the most capitalist in Europe somehow. The point is that what America's done by waging war against Russia in Ukraine, mostly for money, by the way. There's ideology. There's like Victoria Nuland ideology. There's National Socialists, like Azov Battalion ideology. There's this history, that lots of things. But I think ultimately it's about money and weakening Russia. I say this. It is a civilizational hemorrhage. It is a great tragedy. Ukraine was going to be part of a Russian superstate like Belarus and Russia, two countries, part of one kind of union, not a Soviet Union, but just friendship, partnership. And America said, we can't have that. Do the coup. We've been preparing for it for decades. Coup, Euromaidan. We're going to prepare 10, 12 years for a build up towards a war. So you said that China, their largest, they import crude oil from where? Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. Venezuela, we now control that. Well, America controls that. I don't know, in the empire. So that's crossed off the list. Iran, well, we'll see. They've obviously made an effort. And then Russia. It's not just the snap of a finger. And, look, all the Russian energy now goes to China instead of Europe. They had all the infrastructure, all the pipelines, Nord Stream 2, all channeling into Europe. America blew up Nord Stream 2. Well, America with the British and a Scandinavian country or two. And the Germans let it happen, said nothing much. And then they blamed it on not Vladimir Zelensky, but Volodymyr Z from Ukraine. And then what Russia's done in response is they've built new pipelines and new energy direction to China. Great. Well, all of a sudden, if your grand strategy is, if we get into a war with China, we're going to choke out the energy from them. We're going to take over the maritime. We've got our submarines. We've got cruise carrier group. All of a sudden, now they're plugged into Russian physical infrastructure, and that's going to grow and grow and grow as Russia's pivoted east. Because Ukraine says, no, we're not opening up the friendship oil pipeline, Druzhba, friendship. We're not opening that up. Screw Slovakia, screw Hungary. And Hungary and Slovakia say, hey, you can't do this. But yes, they can. Welcome to the new Soviet Union of Europe, headquartered in Brussels. So I think this USA strategy is incoherent because I don't think we should have went to war with Russia. I think Russia are in the right in this war. I think that by doing this, you've empowered and this Sino-Soviet alliance was a great fear back in the day, and then they there was actually a rivalry. Stalin, Mao, they weren't friends because they said, you can nuke me, I can nuke you. We've got conflicts, but now they're best of friends as states. They have a lot of reliance on each other. And with this attack on Iran, people say, oh, there's a junior partner, a senior partner. I think that's nonsense. I think that they're two partners. Who's leading the world? Who's leading the free world? Is it America? No. You've got America, Russia, and China. And I think Russia I think Russia is justified in what it's doing. I appreciate China more than America, based not on the culture, the civilization, the ideology, based on how they're acting. As you said, the Chinese business is business. America's business is war. And that's very sick. War is I got a great quote somewhere. War is the lifeblood of states, and it's terrible. And it makes those that own the country a lot of money, and it impoverishes you. It's sophisticated money laundering and systematic plunder. Very nice. Very sad, actually. So yeah. I'd love to get into my strategic calculus in Iran, but if you have anything you want to interject with, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a segment for Russia, but let me go ahead and plug my locals real quick. And so we are my local. I'm trying to show. There it is. So basically, we're doing a book club with locals. The Tea Club. Um, we're going to be featuring the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, if I'm pronouncing his first name correctly. British author and dystopian novelist. Soma makes life better. Yeah, man. So this will be the first installment of the Tea Club's book club series. And we're going to do a deep dive in some of the most important and thought provoking works of literature and connect them to the modern world. What a better book now that we're dealing with currently than The Brave New World. So, Brave New World's a powerful dystopian novel that exposes themes of technological control, social engineering, consumerism, and the cost of sacrificing freedom for comfort. Does that sound familiar? So this was written in 1932. Huxley's vision of a highly controlled society raises questions that are more relevant today than ever before. And so this is an exclusive members only series. We'll meet live via Rumble Studio, private livecast, to break down the novel chapter by chapter. And we're going to discuss and explore the philosophical, political, and cultural implications of the book while connecting Huxley's ideas to modern society, technology, and global trends. So this series is exclusively for paid members. Use promo code Rumble3. That link is in the description for $3 off your first month's membership. And once the live stream has been commenced, you can view it for non-members in the book club. And link will be provided to members that are paid members within the book club, within the Tea Club locals channel. And that link's in the description. And Rumble, you can click the join button, and it'll take you right to the sign up page. That other than that, like I said, we have I'm going to be doing master classes for digital marketing, leadership, business strategy, where I'm going to invite guest lecturers and experienced professionals to speak to paid members. So stay tuned, prepare thoughtful discussion, deeper learning, and community of serious thinkers. Like I said, that's Professor Red Pill's Tea Club. And thank you. Let's get back to it, I guess. Let me take that off. There we go. Basically, let's stick to the Russian oil influence, and then we can segue into the capstone with China, because that's the main goal.
I can do it after this. I want to explain the strategic calculus as to why this war with Iran occurred, but you can lead first.
Well, I'll have you do that. I just want to plug in the Russia's importance to this situation. They're one of the biggest oil producers and gas producers globally, obviously, and it's used as a tool of statecraft and economic pressure, as we've seen in Europe. But that was a lot to do with self-sanctioning. So their energy exports are vital to their economy. Obviously, it's an oil-rich country. So price spikes can boost revenues, and even in wartime conditions. And basically, this particular conflict with the rise in energy, it's only playing to Russia's hands, which means that Russia now has more money to reinvest, buy more arms, rearm, retool, resupply, and continue the war as long as they need to. And now they're going to have unlimited funds, because that was an issue with the oil prices, because they were sanctioned. They were selling their oil at discount to China and other countries. And now, because Middle Eastern oil is unattainable, and the energy corridor is currently in war. We're from Greece, from Lake Cyprus, all the way to Pakistan. All the way up north is Caucasus, all the way down to the GCC in the Middle East corridor, the Persian Gulf. So, this is a huge energy corridor, Kazakhstan, these areas. And this is interrupting everything. It's interrupting flights. It's interrupting shipping. So this means that Russia is going to have a lot more money. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, Trump is most likely going to tell Europe to go pound sand, because Americas does not have the ability to supply Europe with fuel and energy. And Ukraine Zelensky is going to have to step down and say, hey, You don't have what cards? We're playing cards. What are you talking about? You don't have the cards, Zelensky. And this time he really doesn't have the cards because Europe is going to be dealing with economic issues as a result of the energy prices spikes because they're already dealing with it right now. Our followers in the Telegram group, links in the description, viewers of the podcast. We have a lot of Europeans that watch this podcast, a lot of Europeans in the Telegram group, and they are themselves saying it's bad and it's bad in America, but it's only going to get worse. So the only way that you can alleviate this burden is by opening up trade with Russia and allowing that oil to flow into Europe and end the war in Ukraine. I mean, it's 4 years now, 5 years going on. It's over. To get it done with, let's get some concessions, have a peace deal, and let's rebuild. I would like to go to Ukraine and
peace break out.
You know? Yeah,
let's have peace.
Could be the most prosperous time in European history since post World War II. Rebuild. I'll go to Ukraine. I'll go build universities and education centers. I'll help. You know what I mean? Tomorrow, go rebuild.
It's just horrific. It's horrific what's going on. This is what I said. Americans and Europeans don't really care about Ukraine. If they would, they wouldn't have manufactured this war, especially Washington, London, but Brussels, Paris, and Berlin. This is what I'm talking about when I say Europe. Europeans, they have a liberal, of course we care, compassionate about Ukraine, but they don't because they're supporting this war. And they think they're in the right, and it's disgusting. You said that energy exports are vital to Russia's economy. True. Energy,
not entirely, but most of it, yes.
Very energy imports are vital to European economy because oil fuels the industry. Europe is being deindustrialized. Personally, my energy prices through the roof. I can't afford to live here. It's so expensive. And it's not expensive here relative to elsewhere. It is, especially now we're in the euro. But so oil is important. This is why I say I'm disgusted with this Anglo-American, British policy in Europe against Russia. I think it's immoral. I think it's unjustified. I think it's doomed, and I think it's incoherent for my values, which is peace, prosperity, ultimately. If the war ends, which it has to, it should end sooner than later. They should sue for peace, the Ukrainians. Make me the dictator of Ukraine for a day, unconditional surrender, plead for mercy, go from there. That's what I would do. I think get the best outcome that way. Just say, hey, please be merciful. Of course you can have those 4 oblasts, 5 oblasts, no more. And the killing stops, and you say, and you're gonna reinvest into, you're gonna invest into rebuilding Ukraine, right? That's what you want. One state I would like to say that I was disgusted with, not because what they did is so immoral, it's cowardly. India. Russia was selling their oil at a discount to India, and America said, cut it off, and India said, yes, sir. And they cut off Russian oil. And then this issue in Iran, this war in Iran, energy prices soaring. America said, India, go buy oil again from Russia. Say, yes, sir. And they go to Russia and say, can we have this discount, sir? And Russia say, we'll sell you the oil, no discount. And India's like, well. Not only that, however, there was an Iranian ship that went to India for a training exercise. Part of the condition for this training exercise, no ammunition. So an Iranian ship goes to India, they do their military exercise, war breaks out. The Iranian ship leaves. India says to America, hey buddy, there's an Iranian ship, here's their exact location here. America goes in, submarine, sinks the ship, cuts it in half, broadcasts it, look what we did. So apparently, I didn't verify this, but this is why I've heard from credible analysts, apparently they didn't even save any of the sailors. They just let them all drown. If that's true, it's disgusting by India, it's disgusting by America. It was one can say, well, it could have had surveillance equipment out in the Indian Ocean. It left India sovereign territory, but it's in the Indian Ocean. Maybe, but you knew there was no ammunition on the ship, right? Save this. It's a disgusting thing to occur. America's energy supply to Europe, look, cheap Russian gas subsidized European industrial competitiveness for the past century. American LNG is 3 times the price and going up. It's very expensive. The German chemical, they're titans of industry, chemical manufacturing, etc. They've left and are leaving to America and to China because it's uneconomical. They can't sustain it in Europe, in Germany, without cheap Russian gas. It's terrible. So I'm now going to move on to this strategic decision function. What I like to do is not moral commentary nor reductive single cause. It's not just the Jews. It's not just a bully America. There's many factors. I think, in very simply, you can take Jeffrey Sachs has fantastic commentary or framing of imperial hegemony, and John Mearsheimer has a great theory of great power politics, this tragedy of great powers, this aggression. So why did they start this war? You have a number of factors. You do have the core positive drivers. You have this hegemonic imperative, right? You want to preserve Israeli military primacy and American imperial order in the Middle East. You also have what's known as the clean break, this long war doctrine, a constant. If you pull up DC's comment, so there's been a long duration policy architecture to destroy, degrade, or replace regimes that materially support the anti-Israel regional axis. For 30, 40 years, Netanyahu and the Israelis, they've said, we want to go to war against Iran. And we're gonna scale it up, 7 wars: Sudan, Libya, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen. I don't think Yemen was part of the 7, actually. And the final boss is Iran. So yeah, that's certainly a factor, but it's not the only factor. It's a core driver. You've got this growing threat over time. Iran has had a rising conventional coercive capacity. Right? Missiles, drones, underground infrastructure, proxy depth, strategic survivability. So all of these are core. Those all kind of multiply with each other. And then you've also got military opportunity window, right? Peak feasibility of action, air superiority, target intelligence, alliance readiness, favorable operational access. We've overthrown Syria. We've destroyed the air defense. We now have a straight line to Iran. That's what they did last year. Syria was overthrown in December. That summer, they launch against Iran. The next year, just now, March, February 28th, they launch again against Iran. So there's this military opportunity window. Energy strategic value. Persian Gulf energy is a choke point. There's leverage, energy pricing power, and a long-term horizon positioning for AI energy competition and this wider US-China systemic rivalry. And we'll get into that long horizon positioning for AI, why energy is even more strategic than it has been in the past in a new axis. Then you've got opponent degradation opportunity. Look, even if we don't win completely and achieve all our objectives, we have a chance to inflict lasting damage on Iranian military infrastructure, command systems, the economy, and confidence in the regime. Even if we don't overthrow them, we can destabilize it. Then you have diplomacy, of course. It's been rendered strategically irrelevant. Iran, they said, we want to negotiate. They were in negotiations. The negotiations were nothing but a farce. They did not solve the real issue, because the real issue is Iranian regime, power, missile depth, proxy warfare, and specifically refusal to accept Israeli regional supremacy. I mean, you can say they refuse to accept Israel at all. They don't believe in the existence and legitimacy of the state of Israel. That's a big problem, right? They are the leader of the axis of resistance, and they're framed in a very negative light. Maybe, I understand it, but Are they right? Are they wrong? It's not for me to say. I have an opinion, of course. I think they're wrong. I can go into why later. But certainly they're positioning themselves against the Zog, against the Zionist occupied or organized governance. And so that, of course, as the leader of the axis of resistance, yeah, you're going to be in the crosshairs. You factor all of these to that hegemonic imperative, this clean break doctrine, and threat over time. Multiply those together. You've also got the military opportunity window, energy, the alliance, the opportunity for degradation and diplomacy. And then you weigh that against the kinetic and material costs, the strategic blowback risk, the global legitimacy cost, and the regime resilience factor. Right? How Iran has strategic depth, ideological cohesion, underground assets, is IRGC durability, the ability to continue missile fire after severe bombardment. And so you weigh these up, right? Positives, negatives, equals, and if it crosses a threshold, right, that's when you say, all right, go to war. So if the cost of waiting exceeds the cost of striking now, that's the war. Right? You look at how does Iranian power change over time? You look at this US-Israeli window of opportunity over time, and if that is greater than the immediate war cost, you go to war. That's the real strategic calculus. Now, Jeffrey Sachs, that liberal, kind of left-wing, right, he will say, correctly, of course, this is what you've just described is an illegal war of aggression. It's not necessity. Negotiations were advancing. Iran posed no imminent attack justifying force under Article 51. The JCPOA had already proven a monitored settlement was possible, and this present war reflects a long-running joint project of Israeli regional hegemony and American global hegemony rather than any genuine nuclear emergency. Absolutely. You are correct, Mr. Sachs. Correct legally, correct objectively. But of course, in the great game, no one cares. International law, what's that? International law doesn't mean anything. What does matter is the calculus of power. And that's what this is all about. If you look, in fact, at the long arc of history, empires are always fighting over power and whatever resource defines power in that era. So I'm going to end it. I'm going to end my little rant here, which is to say that this transformation of energy, of resources, of power in the ancient world, it was land and gold and people and food. In the industrial era, it became capital, factories, and markets. In the 20th century, it was energy, especially oil, right, industrial. But now we're entering into another phase where the decisive resource is compute infrastructure, artificial intelligence systems that require enormous quantities of electricity, data centers, and specialized materials, such as silver. This is what we were talking about with Sven, about the silver mines in South America and the naval ports, etc. So the geopolitics we're watching today is not just about the oil fields for cheap energy prices and economic output in this traditional sense. It's about control over the energy systems that will power the next technological epoch. And when you look at it that way, the Middle East remains central, not because history is stuck in the past, and not just because Israel and the Jews and the Freemasons and the Frankists and the Rothschilds. but the Middle East remains central because the future of technological power still runs through those energy choke points. Muted, sir.
Yeah, I know I'm muted. I'm just saying, like, it's basically we're at a cusp of like a new world order that was established since I believe the Carter administration, and this has been mentioned and mentioned and mentioned. Excuse me, but I believe that this Iranian conflict, this new Iranian conflict, is the ending of that new world order. And for it to be complete, it's going to require the end of Venezuela, the end of Cuba, the end of Iran. And then, they've went through all the different, like I said, like Iran is like the final boss, and like a video games, spiel kind of thing. But nonetheless, even as renewables grow, renewable energy, Green New Deal, naval checkpoints, politics, and oil markets are still intertwined. It's still the global economy, global trade is still dependent on trade and oil and energy corridors. So the control of energy resources and routes remain a core driver of global diplomacy rather, and conflict. And major powers from the United States to China, Russia, and Iran definitely play this game, but not with tanks or missiles. They play it with oil barrels and pipeline diplomacy.
And drones.
That's it. And drones. Yeah. And that's all I've got to say on that topic. I appreciate you guys for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Join locals. Links in description. Adam Max Madwell Mad Max Maxwell. Adam Mad Maxwell. Yeah. His link tree's in there. Terrence Pop's links in there as well. Support his channel. He's needing subscribers. Apparently he's being shadow banned, and he got deplatformed. So support his content as well. I do post it in the Telegram groups once in a while. But I gotta thank you guys for your support. We started here with like nothing. Zero. No, I mean, we grew this channel and then the platforms. I mean, we started on Rumble. We got up to 100 followers. Thanks, guys, for subscribing. We got over 100. Awesome. We're on Rumble Studio now. And the videos have gotten quite a bit. YouTube is growing. I think I'm at 84 now. I don't know how many followers you got right now on yours. How many subs? Do you check? I check every day. But like, yeah, I'm at 84. It's probably 86, 87, maybe 6 or 7. But like they like to just delete subscribers at random for some reason. But just keep your support, man. Like, share with friends, share on Telegram. Telegram's awesome. It's an awesome platform. Share as much as you can if you find it interesting. You like, hey, I just saw this podcast. They're talking about oil, talking about all kinds of stuff. A lot of stuff they got right. Some stuff maybe they got wrong. But for the most part, I hope you guys enjoy the content. Like I said, stay tuned for deep dives. And stay tuned. Join the locals channel. And like I said, master classes. Published my book on there about leadership. I'm a leadership expert. And like I said, I know a little bit about geopolitics. I mean, I do study. I work in academia. But I hope you find the information we're providing is useful and entertaining. Main thing. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, Adam, I'm just gonna summarize my hypothesis here. War is best understood as a hegemonic enforcement function rather than a mere response to nuclear proliferation. Israeli regional supremacy and American imperial order form the structural objective. The clean break doctrine logic supplies the long-run architecture, and the trigger for action emerges when Iran's growing missile depth, proxy reach, underground survivability, lack of air defense, and wider energy strategic value increase faster than the US-Israeli bloc is willing to tolerate. Negotiations, even if genuinely advancing on enrichment, do not resolve that underlying problem, because the real issue is not simply uranium, of course, but Iranian regime power and its capacity to impose conventional coercion against Israel while aligning with anti-American forces across the region. The launch decision, therefore, occurs when the expected cost of delay exceeds the immediate military, economic, and diplomatic cost of the war, making the conflict a strategic timing calculation inside an openly imperial framework. That's why we've gone to war against Iran. Are we going to win? Are we going to lose? Is the war going to continue? Is Trump looking for an off-ramp, allegedly? I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. Things are evolving very quickly. We're covering it here on the Liberty Report. Thank you very much for tuning in. Subscribe to our socials.